Alright, so in this video, I decided to do something different. Usually I make videos of me just getting destroyed by 12-year-old kids in Europe, but in this video I'm going to be talking about the history of America. Despite popular belief, America wasn't really supposed to exist. It was basically a rebel colony, and the fact that America had to face one of the biggest empires in the whole entire world at that time, which was the British Empire, it's actually pretty amazing that America even existed in the first place. Because they, honestly, if the British wanted to, they would have wiped out America completely. To be honest, the British Empire probably used only 10% of its power, and that's probably why America still exists. I have a little clip from a comedian that basically summarizes how unlikely America was to exist.
Hey, United States! All right, okay. You're thinking War of Independence, America finds itself free of Great Britain. Yeah, they see that as a win, we see that as a lucky fucking escape. But let's not forget, in the War of 1812 to 1814, the Royal Navy sailed up the Potomac River, set fire to the White House, and the Americans had to whitewash it to cover up the fire damage, which is why it's called the White House. The Americans sued for peace at the end of 1814, even though they won a battle at the end of the war. The war's already over, the stupid fuckers were still fighting, even though they'd already lost. And that is America, and they've been working for us ever since.
Alright, that being said, we're gonna jump right in. So, if you ask any American kid, they should be able to know this, and that is, what was the first colony? In other words, when did America first start? And that's of course in Jamestown, which it kind of looks like a swampy area like here. And it was founded in 1607. Within 12 years of Jamestown being established, slavery was normalized and slaves began to be rapidly imported in. And the reason why I wanted to acknowledge this fact is because African Americans have been an integral part of America since the birth of America. In other words, Black history is American history. Those two things cannot be subdivided into different categories. Black history is American history. Without African Americans, America would not be the nation that it is today. The consequences of slavery has plagued Americans even to this day. For example, we can see the recent rioting, the recent movement because of George Floyd and the police brutality that led to his death. In my opinion, America still is a divided country where supposedly America is a melting pot where, it brings all these immigrants, all these different type of people together, but at the same time it's very hypocritical because a lot of people judge other people for their skin and their race. A lot of Americans are extremely proud of the nation. They're like, yeah, America. But as a person who've taken both AP US history classes as well as AP US government classes, I can assure you, America is pretty goddamn racist. Like the history. Like if you look at the court cases, the historical events that took place, it's just racist. And oh my God. Like, I'm not saying I'm not proud of America because, to be fair, America is a pretty influential nation. It's a global leader, and I'm definitely proud that I'm American. I'm blessed that I was born here, but the history, oh my God, voice crack. The history is bad. Like, it's straight up so embarrassing, and I think, in my opinion, it's pretty shameful. So instead of focusing on just little things, like little events that happened in America, I'm going to be focusing on the huge pivotal points, such as the Civil War, the Reconstruction of the South, and basically segregation. Alright, first things first, I'm going to be talking about the Civil War. This happened in 1861, and if you don't know, at the time, America was divided into two parts, the North and the South. The North wanted to abolish slavery because, I guess they wanted to treat African Americans as actual people, and the South was like, nah, we need slaves for our economy. And this was the major division. Not only were their economies different, the South depended heavily on slaves. Because of all this, Southerners actually started preaching that Black people were meant to be slaves because of God, and you can see how twisted their ideology became because of the fact that their entire economy was mostly dependent on crops, which of course needed slaves to do. So you'd probably expect that after the Civil War, a lot of these free slaves will live different lives, happy and free, but in actuality, nothing really changed much. A lot of these freed slaves didn't get the land that they were promised. In fact, more than 4 million had to resort to some other option, and the common option was this thing called sharecropping. And sharecropping was basically working on a plantation, basically the same thing that they did before, except they were just considered free. Nothing really changed for them. And this was all followed by this era called the Reconstruction of the South, which, oh my God, it hurts my brain, okay? It was supposed to just whip the South right back in shape, you just eradicate racism. That never happened, okay? The land that I was talking about that's given to all these freed black people, they were taken right back to the Southerners who owned them before. And not only that, the Reconstruction of the South was followed by a more violent era of the KKK, and it was just all horrible. And of course, let's not forget about the white supremacy that started to envelop in the South. It was already there, but it only got more violent. And nothing changed. Nothing did. And sometimes I just think to myself, if somehow people would have hit back the South harder during this time where Southerners were criticized, somewhere they were all blamed for the slavery, if the South was more, I suppose, criticized and had more discipline, who knows? Who knows how America would be now? These two things that I have and the signs kind of highlights how racist America was. And I'm going to be starting with a 3/5 compromise. So the 3/5 compromise was basically for every 5 slaves, for every 5 African Americans, they would count for 3 votes. This is basically implying that an African American doesn't count for 1 vote. It's saying that you need 5 African Americans to count for 3. And okay, this is just straight up weird and also quite evil. And if you look at the reason why this was a thing, it's even more just I'm just shocked, okay? So basically, the South was like, hey, we have all these slaves. However, we also want to have a political advantage. So they decided, even though we treat slaves as property, we're going to give them the right to vote. And obviously, the North was like, no, dude, if you're going to treat them as property, why are you giving them the right to vote? And this was the compromise that was settled. And honestly, this is so evil because it was basically the Southern way of saying that African Americans don't have the right to vote, yet we're going to give them just for our own benefit. Now, this is absolutely disgusting. Anyway, this is the one called Dred Scott case. I think this summarizes, this encapsulates, this highlights the racism in America. So basically, this case was a man named Dred Scott who had a wife and 2 daughters, and he wanted to be free. He wanted to sue for his freedom. So he went to the Supreme Court of the U.S. It eventually got there. And do you know what the goddamn Supreme Court of the U.S. said? The court ruled that African Americans were not American and that Dred Scott, as a slave, was property, and therefore he didn't have the right to sue for his freedom. They said that the U.S. Constitution couldn't grant him the right of freedom because his freedom belonged to the owners that owned him. Which, oh my God, it just doesn't make sense. They basically said that black people were property. This is not okay. I mean, this is the type of bullshit that black people had to go through for hundreds of years. This is not acceptable. Yeah, that's America in a nutshell. I mean, I could go on about the positive things about America, like the presidents like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, and all of that, but I don't know. I just chose the parts that defined America the most. And I hope you learned something from this video. By no means, I'm not trying to say I'm a historical, expert, but from what I've learned from school, this is basically how America became the nation that it is today. I feel that racism that is inherent in America isn't going away because it's so deep rooted. The nation is so young, yet it has been crippled because of slavery. Oh my God, I don't understand. There's some days where I just wish slavery never happened, and I just imagine, what America would have been without slavery. But honestly, in my opinion, Black History Month feels so neglecting, why 1 month? I don't understand that, because Black history is American history. You should be taught the whole year round. And I feel like that's a part where our school system kind of comes short, I'm just saying all this on Minecraft, so I doubt people will listen, but I don't know. I think that there has to be some radical changes in the future to ensure that future generations won't have racism as their main problem. I strongly believe that even today, America is pretty divided. Well, I hope you learned something from this video. So yeah, peace.